Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, a podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. And now your host, David Ginsburg.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Tales from the Fandom. Once again, I got to find somebody off the internet, off the Twitterverse, and they have decided to come and talk to me about a number of their fandoms. And I am joined by Brittney. You may know them on the Twitter as the Friendly Dungeon Mom or Dungeon Mom, or you may just know them as the person that is really cool. And I hope that you will follow them after you get done listening to this conversation. Brittney, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me on the podcast today.
It's been a pleasure. It's been one of the things that I love on Twitter, and we'll obviously talk about it because your handle of Dungeon Mom lends itself well to the community that we are both a part of on Twitter.
Oh yeah.
But it's so fun finding new people in like the tabletop community, and following you has been just a real pleasure seeing like your interactions with the community.
Well, I figure, positivity breeds positivity, karma. I'm a big believer in karma. Like you give what you get. And I just genuinely want to be, I hope I am, this is my goal, a nice person and do nice things for the community and just sort of, be able to be a place of safety. The community is great. Like I have had very, very few negative interactions with the community so far. It is a very welcoming and encompassing community, and I feel like, there's space for everyone. There really and truly is space for everyone, and if we can just sort of let, the collective, instead of competing against each other and putting each other down, I found that if you uplift people more, instead of being like, you are my mortal enemy, I am sworn against you. Sorry, that it is, it's just more beneficial as a whole, because then the community grows, the community becomes healthier, becomes more, welcoming, loving, big group hug, metaphor, I guess, question mark. I don't know where I'm going with this, but I'm going to stop.
That is okay. And we'll definitely talk about it more once we get to that portion of our conversation. But I wanted to start off with probably one of the hottest button issues in the world of fandoms. And for those who, I'm going to just give the spoiler note just in case. Everything after this is spoilers for anything that we talk about. So if you haven't watched Game of Thrones or you haven't watched Endgame, totally just pause, skip to a different episode. I've got plenty of good episodes that you can listen to, and then come back when you've watched either Game of Thrones or Endgame, and we'll be good. But we're going to talk about Game of Thrones to start with.
Okay, here we go.
I'm going to start off easy.
Okay.
When you got into Game of Thrones, was it through the books first? Was it through the TV show first? How did you first get involved with Game of Thrones?
I actually don't. I know it was the TV show, and then the TV show then obviously led into the books. I am a big, huge book nerd. You will see walls and walls of books if you ever come to my house, and varying genres. And then eventually, because I became a mom then, the books then led into audiobooks, because you don't have time to read much when you become a mom. So when you become a parent at all, really, so I was not a big, it's funny because I was not a big audiobook fan before I became a parent, but then like suddenly I was like, oh, this isn't bad. I can listen to a book and get stuff done, and I hands free, and I can, take care of my kid. And then I've sort of, enjoyed them ever since. But yeah, I think when I started watching the show, at least the first season, if not the second season, was out. I think. I don't think that because HBO, I think Game of Thrones came out in 2008, correct?
Yeah, either 2008 or 2009, because I'd recommended it to friends at a certain point. I'm going to look it up on the phone just in case.
Okay, and this is going to this is going to make me sound, this is going to age me a little bit. 2008, I just graduated high school. I think it was my first year of college. And so, like, HBO was definitely an adult,
Mm-hmm.
it was an adult TV program. And my family was not, we weren't conservative, but it was definitely, like, these are adult shows, these are kids shows, these are, maybe depending on the age and the maturity of the child shows. So it wasn't like it was like forbidden, but it was definitely one of those ones where I was aware that it was a very adult, just because of, the graphic nature of a lot of HBO shows. And so I think it was at least at the second season, after the second season, because me and my husband binge watched. I know we binge watched the first season. I'm not sure if we binge watched the second or not. But I remember, yeah. No, yes, because the third season was the first one sorry, I'm remembering this as I am talking. Because I remember we watched The Red Wedding live on TV. That was actually, The Red Wedding was actually the reason that I started reading the books, because I was like, oh my god, plot twist. Nobody is safe. I mean, like, nobody is safe when our main character, Ned Stark, who we have rooted for, we have watched, we have, cheered on, gets his head lopped off in episode 9 of the first season. And yeah, spoiler warning, if literal spoiler warning, we're going way back, if you don't know. But, and then obviously, his son takes up that mantle of, becoming sort of the main character of, like, that thread of the show, I guess. Because there's definitely very many main characters who have their own threads, but like his son took up that thread of the, Rob took up the thread of, the Starks, journey, in season 2, and then season 3, I believe, was the season that he got, I think, was the Red Wedding. Yes, I think so. God, it's been forever since I watched. I need to watch the whole thing now. I feel like that would definitely give me a different point of view on the last couple seasons, which I know have been very controversial.
I have a friend that's doing that now, and she said that it's been a little bit revealing as far as just the character motivations, and I guess there are things where even, I think it was Amelia Clark, gave an interview and said that even during the first seasons, she would get notes on maybe like inflections of words or body language to kind of like lay groundwork for what was eventually to come. And at that time, she's like, okay, I'll just do what they're telling me to do because they're the people running the show.
Well, I mean, I feel like Daenerys is definitely that tragic anti-hero figure. And, Tyrion, when he talked with Jon Snow when he was imprisoned, and Jon and him had that beautiful scene together during the last episode. He's like, she liberated Slaver's Bay, and we celebrated her for it. She liberated Meereen, and we celebrated her for it. She, burned the Masters, and we celebrated her for it. Like, and you look back on that, and she's, it's not. I don't think the problem is so much, at least for me, is Mad Queen came out of nowhere, because it's definitely been hinted at. But I feel like in sort of the case of, I guess it's the easiest. She's been, I guess now compared to Anakin Skywalker from Star Wars, just sort of, even though like you knew the hints were there, and obviously we know Anakin becomes Darth Vader because the prequels were made after the original trilogy.
Right.
But it's sort of, even though his journey and his path and his, his eventual downfall and then, revival and rise again, he does redeem himself at the end. you're rooting for him not to do the thing. You're like, don't do it, don't do it. You have that monologue in your head, and I feel like that is, but like at least for me, was a very much a don't do it, don't do it. Like, even though there were those hints, Tyrion was right. She did all these bad things and people praised her for it. So like, because we were rooting for her to not be that person that I think in the back of our head we knew she was. If that makes any sense.
Oh, it does make sense. I mean, from I think on that 5th episode when you hear the bells and you're like, okay, like I'm here taking that breath of, okay, we're gonna move on. We're gonna see, like, in our heads, we're like, okay, Arya's gonna go get Cersei now, and it's gonna be Arya taking out Cersei from, like, oh, she's taken Jaime Lannister's fit, something.
Yeah.
And then instead you see like Daenerys like starting to get like all like that I have a hard time like describing like the facial features that she is making.
Oh, there are so many emotions that she goes through in such a short period of time. And it's beautiful. Amelia does an amazing job with that scene.
And when that happened, I was like, oh no.
Yeah, when she takes off on Drogon and she starts strafing the city, it's oh my god, that.
And not only that, there was a moment like Jon and Davos are going through the city with like the Stark bannermen, basically, or the Northerners, and they come across Grey Worm, and this is before like that execution scene. I think that's in the 6th episode, but they're in the streets, and I'm thinking, oh snap, Grey Worm's got like that like 10-foot like pole arm.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, he's gonna take Jon out. Like, I fully expected Grey Worm to be like, oh, you're dead. I will follow orders from the queen. You're dead.
Oh yeah, in the 6th episode, and he's like, these are, they surrendered, and Jon is the very honorable man, like, they surrendered. Do not kill them. He's like, yeah, they surrendered, but they also chose to follow her. It's almost the stark and funny put on words, the stark contrast between Grey Worm in that scene and then Arya. I think either in season 6 or I think it's either 5 or 6 when she comes back. No, I think this is it? No, it's when she comes back to Westeros. And she's sitting with that group of Lannister soldiers, and you can tell, like, when she sits down with them, she means to kill them. Like, there's gonna be something going down, and that's, I think, the episode where Ed Sheeran also guest starred as a Lannister soldier, and I actually didn't mind that. I was like, oh, hey, that's a cool cameo. But she sits and she talks with them, and as she talks with them, she realizes that yes, they may be Lannister soldiers, but they're just guys doing their job. It's like the guard in Iron Man 3 when Tony's busting into the complex, and he's like, he puts up his hands. He's like, nope, I just work here. I've had enough. Please let me leave. Like, they're just doing a job. They're making ends meet for their family. They're doing what they can to survive in this world, and Arya lets them live. But in sheer contrast to that, you look at Grey Worm, and Grey Worm's like, yeah, no, you fought for the wrong people, you die. Like, there's no middle ground, there's no sympathy, there's no empathy, and one cannot really blame Grey Worm because the episode previous, he lost Missandei.
And that's one of the things I think, obviously, whenever you get books comparison to any other media like movies or TV shows, the books are one of those things where they have so much more time and space to add in those, you have all these great houses fighting over a throne, but what's really happening is everybody that's not like that big name is just getting trashed on, and their farms are gone, their livelihood is gone, they're trying to scrounge for food, or hopefully they don't get waylaid on the road trying to go from one place to another at that point. And I like that even with you mentioned the Lannister soldiers, and at the time I had no clue who like Ed Sheeran was. I was like, oh look, it's a redheaded guy. That's cool. Sure.
I have very little knowledge of Ed Sheeran. I just knew he was a singer, and I kind of knew his face, and I was like, hey, it's Ed Sheeran. Kind of like, apparently Aaron Rodgers was in episode 5 of Game of Thrones. He was a guy. He had a cameo.
Yeah, I had no clue because I don't like, I knew Ed Sheeran through his music, but I knew he had like red hair, but I didn't know he was in Game of Thrones or Aaron Rodgers until after I saw it on Twitter, and it was like, oh, okay. I mean, sure, why not?
Exactly. I just, yeah, I don't know. It's such a love-hate relationship with a book to TV adaptation, although I will say they have done a fantastic job
Hmm.
of doing that. And like you said, I think one of the things that makes Game of Thrones so, it sets it apart from any other sort of fantasy genre TV show that we have out there, is that it shows you the effect that it has on the little people, like from especially in episode 5 of the last season when Dany is strafing the city. You either see it from the moment she takes off after that shot, you either see it from the ground, you see it, from the people's perspective, or you see it from Cersei, who
Hmm.
has the bird's eye view. Or dragon's eye view, I guess, in this case. But, oh, that was a really bad pun. You know what I mean? But so, it humanizes that moment, like that, you don't see it from the hero's point of view, quote unquote hero. At
Right.
that point, she's definitely not the hero at that point.
Absolutely.
So,
Now, some of the questions I like to ask when we talk about like some of these big series, obviously, is who is your favorite character in Game of Thrones?
I've always, I mean, I like Dany. I like, even after she did what she did, I still like her as a character because she is a complex character. I love characters who are not black and white, who are not just this cookie cutter mold of what good should be. That's Ned Stark and Jon Snow. They are the cookie cutter what good should be. I mean, even Cersei doesn't fit the cookie cutter what bad should be mold. She's a very three-dimensional character. I don't even think there's really that many characters in Game of Thrones that are you can't at one point empathize with them. Well, maybe the High Sparrow. He might be like one of the only ones. He might be one of the only ones or the shame nun, who you are literally like, I want to see you dead. Because there's very much moments in this entire show where you can empathize. You may not agree with them fully in their actions, but you can empathize with these characters. Definitely Dany. Like I said, Dany was definitely one of my favorites. I love dragons, so I was like, hey, she's got dragons, but she's also very much a, take charge, kick ass, take no prisoners sort of lady, and that's really cool to see. We need more representation. Again, even though she did what she did, it's, we could talk about that all day, whether or not it's justifiable. It's not justifiable, but it's, whether she did the right thing, I guess. And then I loved Arya from The Off. I just love that she reminded me a lot of myself, because I was definitely not the cookie cutter, girl growing up. I was very much a tomboy. I was very much, I played with action figures instead of Barbie dolls, and, I played video games, and, definitely not the more, I was very nerdy and bookish, and and Arya just sort of resonated with me because I was like, yes, this is somebody who I identify with,
Hmm.
on a just on a one-to-one sort of like, oh, this person is, is very much like me, just in the fact that she's rejecting everything that, society tells her she has to be. And she's like, no, I'm not this. I've never been a lady. I've never been good at any of the lady things. And, I think we definitely need more diverse woman characters to show that spectrum, because Sansa, is definitely the opposite. She's very good. And that's probably why I didn't like Sansa to begin with. She reminded me a little bit of my own sister, who I do love, by the way, but just growing up, she was always good at everything. And it was like, just, I could totally empathize with Arya being like, you have a sister who's good at everything, and you're just sort of there in the background going, hey, I'm me and I like being me, but I'm not gonna, conform, but I have this person who's, so yeah, I could totally empathize with Arya. Arya is definitely my favorite.
Okay, I dig that.
Who's your favorite character, if I have to ask? If you had to pick one of your children.
Well, as far as Game of Thrones children go, I'm fully supportive behind Tyrion.
Tyrion is so good.
I love Tyrion, but I think Tyrion and alongside with Varys. Like, I like Varys for like other reasons. I like Tyrion. I think that at a certain point, they always made mention of, like, Tyrion is one of the smartest people in the room.
Yeah.
He's super smart, but then it gets to this point where it's like he's not really hitting it out of the park with the advice and counsel. Like, maybe he is, and obviously the people listening are not following the following what he's saying. But I mean, even going to see Cersei to try and get the Lannister army to go to the north, like, why even bother? But
I mean, I think it also is a good thing where even though you're the smartest person in the room, you still can make mistakes. So I think, I love Tyrion too. I think he's an amazing character. Peter Dinklage is so good as Tyrion. But I think, I think he does get to that point where it's just like, dude, you need to stop. You just need, dude, just stop, please.
Yeah, and I liked I liked Arya. I grew to like Sansa after a while.
I grew to like Sansa too, just like I grew to like my sister in real life as well. Well, it's just, you get to that point where they're like, siblings, if they butt heads, and I love my sister. She's an amazing person. But it's definitely, that competitive butt heads nature where and it wasn't even competitive, it was more just frustration, I guess. And then, but then, they grow up and you grow up, and then kind of like Arya and Sansa, you find that, that middle ground where you can come together and, sort of not compete or butt heads anymore, which I think they did spectacularly in the show, although the Arya versus Sansa thing in season 7 was kind of stupid. Like, no,
Yeah.
just let them be sisters and be happy to be with each other. They don't have to fight. Stop.
Exactly. I guess a final question about Game of Thrones before we move on is, overall, like, if somebody was asking, like, would you recommend the show for them to watch? Would you recommend them the show? I know that's been a debate topic. Is did the last season, like, make the show basically where you don't want to watch it, or do you, like, I had somebody say that they didn't want to, that their end of the show is when the Night King is destroyed, and they're like, okay, that's it, the show's over.
I definitely would still recommend it. I think for all of its faults and for everything that was done in the last 2 seasons especially, it is still an amazing masterpiece, cinematic masterpiece of television. And David and Dan, the showrunners, get a lot of flack from fans about, after the book stopped, they didn't, that showed that they're writing, but you have to give them some slack because George R. R. Martin has not finished a book. He is 9 years overdue in finishing a book. Um, and um, and George R. R. Martin also gave David and Dan the big plot points of how, you know, they have said that they're you know, they're following the outline that George gave them. Now,
Hmm.
obviously, he didn't, you know, set them up with a word by word, you know, here's my 500-page manuscript of Winds of Winter. Enjoy. But he gave them the big plot points. And I think that's what everybody needs to realize is that that's what they were given. They have to go from point A to point B and fill in the blanks.
Hmm.
And also have to realize that their characters are slightly different than their book counterpart, and so they will act slightly differently. And I think that's, you know, at the end of the day, they did an amazing job adapting basically plot points. They, you know, like a bullet point list. Like, these are the major things that happens. You know, the wall falls down. You know, she loses a dragon. She loses another dragon. Arya kills the Night King. You know, Dany burns King's Landing. Jon kills Dany. Drogon burns the throne. Just the very, like, the big beats. They were given the big beats, and they did an amazing job with that. Like, I would challenge any fan to do a better job. And I know, you know, we're all, you know, think that we can do a better job, you know, especially if it's something that we don't necessarily agree with fully. But I think the major problems of season 7 and season 8 could have been completely fixed with a 10 season or a 10 episode season. I think if they had had more time to develop those, if we had have more time watching Dany go Mad Queen, because she loses Missandei, and then you can just tell that it's like the gloves are off. You know, she's taken the gloves off. No more Mr. Nice guy or girl, you know, no more Mr. Nice Khaleesi.
Hmm.
And she, you know, and nobody can fault her. But it would have been nice to see a couple of episodes, or even just an episode dedicated to her on Dragonstone, and everybody coming to her and talking to her and being like, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And she's like, you know, I've lost everybody I've ever loved because of this stupid throne. And, you know, just seeing that progression of um you know, a woman who is, you know, very much, you know, the liberator of Slaver's Bay, to this woman who just doesn't give a shit anymore. And she doesn't give two shits when she gets to King's Landing, and she thinks it's going to be enough, a peaceful, but, you know, and you can tell on her face when she's on Drogon and she's looking at this city and everything that it represents, and you could just tell she's had enough. And, you know, maybe I think if they had had that monologue in the previously on season where they had everybody's sort of montage of this, you know, be a dragon, all these sort of dragon, and everything, you know, that everybody that ever said to her.
Hmm.
If they had had that playing over Amelia's amazing acting, not saying that, you know, that does not stand alone, but it would have added that extra level of, oh shit, you know, just sort of like moment where you go, okay, yeah, that's justifiable. You know, I mean, not justifiable, but you can see her point of view better because
Hmm.
we are in her head at that moment. And and the other thing too, I will say about Dany, and when people go Mad Queen, you know, we didn't get the payoff, you know, all that kind of stuff. Um, is that if you look back at other seasons, this is why I want to go back and watch from season 1 to season 8, and why I haven't canceled my HBO subscription yet, is that if you watch her through her entire arc, and I may be wrong, but this is my personal opinion, if you watch her through her entire arc, you will see her sort of you will see that every time that she wants to use fire and blood, somebody reins her in. Whether it's Jorah, whether it's Tyrion, Varys, Sir Barristan, even Missandei, you know, sort of reining her worst impulses in. And then you get to season 8 and you see her slowly watch, you know, Jorah dies in the battle against the Long Night. Missandei gets beheaded. Varys betrays her. You know, Tyrion isn't exactly giving the best advice anymore. Jon only sees her as his queen. You see all of these people just either die or just, you know, start to distance themselves from her. And you can understand that she no longer has that little conscience on her shoulder telling her, no, this is wrong. This is, even though she probably knows in her heart of hearts that it is wrong, she doesn't have anybody to check those impulses anymore. You know, even if she had 2 dragons going into the battle for King's Landing, I think it would have gone differently because you had Jon on a dragon. Jon may have been able to, you know, talk her down, you know, but you just, you know, you see all those people who have reined her in and they're not there anymore, and she finally does what she has been saying she's going to do since season 2. I will take what is mine with fire and blood, and she does, because she no longer has those people to check her. I mean, that's my personal take on it, you know, that we could have used more build up in season 8, but it was definitely there if you go back and you watch. So but yeah, I would definitely recommend Game of Thrones, you know, with the caveat that obviously, you know, they did the best they could with what they had, which is, you know, still in Game of Thrones scope pretty darn good.
Well, there we go. That's a good way to end Game of Thrones.
Yes.
For this. I'm sure more people will talk to me about Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah, I love to hear other people's opinions on it too. You know, it's wide and varying, as it should be. As with any good show should be.
Oh yes. Another big, I guess, fandom, which spanned, I believe it's 22 movies over 10 years, has been the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which we got the wrap up of that. I guess you would call it. I can't remember what they're calling the whole 22 thing. They had some like special name for it.
Yeah, it's like, I know it's like stage or something 3 or.
Well, I know that they go do the phases, but
phase
I think that they had dubbed all the 22 movies like the Infinity Phase or something of that nature, because they're releasing a big box set of all the like Blu-rays at some point.
Ooh.
But we're gonna talk Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yay!
And I mean, there's so much to cover that we would have to spend like hours to cover it all. So I guess I'll start off with. Did you have a favorite character, favorite movie? Like, what brought you into the universe? Yeah, I get those are 3 good questions to start with.
I guess we'll start with what brought me into the universe. I've always been a big Marvel fan. Spider-Man is my favorite superhero, mainly because it's sort of that, you know, again, the identifiable geeky nerd, you know, not traditional superhero, and sort of kind of what they say, what Miles says in the Spider-Verse, you know, anyone can wear the mask, as it were. So, I mean, then obviously my Twitter handle is Friendly Neighborhood Dungeon Mom, which the friendly neighborhood comes from Spider-Man. My daughter's middle name is unabashedly Parker, as homage to my favorite superhero. We'll see how she feels about that when she gets older. She's only 3 now, so we'll see how that goes. I mean, I love the name Parker anyways for a girl, so it works both ways, but I'm not going to lie and say that wasn't one of the driving forces. I remember seeing the first Iron Man movie way back in like, oh God, what was it? 2000? I don't even remember.
I think it was 2000. It's either
9?
2008 or
Yeah,
2009.
2008 or 2009. Again, fresh-faced college me, and I remember seeing it with my aunt, who is a big Marvel. She's the one that got me into Marvel. Growing up, I have Spider-Man comic books. I got a whole bunch of comic books. And so I remember seeing it and thinking, "Ooh, this is, kind of cool." And Robert Downey Jr., I don't think anybody can dispute that he is Iron Man and Tony Stark and amazing in what he does. And then after that, it was sort of like, okay, this was cool. And then, that you hear the whispers, oh, they're gonna, it's gonna be a thing. They're gonna put together the Avengers, and I kind of knew who the Avengers were. I knew who roughly were in the Avengers. I was much more a Spider-Man nerd, so like, I watched the Raimi Spider-Man movies, which were awesome. Tobey Maguire is a good Spider-Man, and same thing with Andrew Garfield. But I think we finally hit the key Spider-Man with Tom Holland. Tom Holland is now my favorite Spider-Man. And so it was like, oh, they're gonna make things, and then Thor came. I think it was Iron Man 2 came out, and then Thor, and then it was the Avengers, or no, it was the Incredible Hulk, which wasn't. There's 2 Incredible Hulks, I think. And then the Avengers. Wait, no, there was Captain America too, first Avenger. I'm just trying to think of there's so many. You said there was 22 movies.
Yeah, 22. So it is okay to
like
mess up order. Like, I am not here to be like, we're not getting the order correct.
Yeah, there was I know there was 2 Iron Mans, a Captain America, an Incredible Hulk, and a Thor movie before there was Avengers.
Correct. I believe that is correct.
I think because the other Incredible Hulk movie, or Hulk,
Hulk was Ang Lee way back in like 2003 before anything.
Before there was this was even a whisper of a thing. So, and then it was the Avengers, and like the Avengers was like, okay, yeah, this is fun, like, okay, this is great, and then you just like from there it just expanded and built, and I'd have to say definitely my favorite movie. I think you asked that question. Would definitely have to be, again, because I'm a Spider-Man person. I love Spider-Man. Was when they did Spider-Man Homecoming, and just Tom Holland knocked it out of the park as Spider-Man. I mean, we saw him in Civil War first, when he teams up with Iron Man, but still, oh my God, that kid is amazing. He is the perfect blend of Spider-Man and nerdy Peter Parker. They finally got it right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it works. It works because the way that he looks and talks, and just everybody that's surrounding him, it really just.
Yeah,
it's great.
I love his relationship with Tony Stark and Iron Man, and just that sort of dynamic that they have. I will say my second favorite movie is surprisingly Ant-Man, mainly because I like the fact, and I was actually talking about this with somebody, a friend of mine, the other day. We watched Ant-Man and the Wasp, and then we were talking about Ant-Man and sort of the Ant-Man franchise. And then to a lesser extent also Guardians of the Galaxy, that those 2 movies know that they have a little bit of a weird premise, even for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but they lean into it into such a good way that, like, Ant-Man could have been this. I mean, it is kind of campy. I'm not gonna lie. Paul Rudd, brings the camp, but in a fun way. But it could have definitely been like 60s Batman, like that sort of camp where it's just cringe, but they do it in such a way where they know that their source material is definitely, I wouldn't say questionable, but definitely more, like I said, out there, even for Marvel. but they lean into it. And Guardians of the Galaxy to a lesser extent had sort of Star Wars to go on and that sort of space pirate vibe, which Star Wars definitely has. So they leaned into that a little bit more, and it works.
Right.
But yeah, I love Ant-Man just for the way that they make it work and they make it fit in with this universe that they've built, which obviously has magic and gods and space travel and all these things that just you don't think that the pieces and the puzzle should fit, but they make it fit, and it's so good to watch. And so yeah, definitely Spider-Man is number one, but very, very closely followed by Ant-Man, just because of the way that they did that movie, and like the respect that they gave the source material and realizing, we're talking about a guy who's called Ant-Man, and you don't think it could get any weirder than Spider-Man, just name-wise. But yeah, we have a guy who shrinks to the size of an ant, and he communicates with ants, and he has the strength and power of an ant. And just like the sheer stupidity of it, but it works so, like, just the train scene with the Thomas the Train Engine scene where they're fighting in his daughter's bedroom, and the Yellow Jackets, you hear the like just the crazy the chug chug chug, and the train's coming down the track, and Yellow Jacket's bracing for the impact, and you see it, like he's like and then it cuts to the wide shot of the train, and it just falls over. Oh my god, it's amazing. Like, it's amazing the way that they do these that movie. I don't know, it just is so stupid and hilarious and amazing. And Paul Rudd, again, another amazing actor. I can't imagine Scott being played by anybody else. And I think that's the best thing about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is that they have, like, I don't think there is one casting, one movie where you go, oh, that is not, like, that is the wrong choice. Like, there may be some where you go, well, okay, that's a bold choice. Maybe not necessarily wrong, but bold. But I think everybody just, they've continuously hit the nail, or on the head when it comes to casting these things. It's
It's something where I remember I was like, okay, Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr. That is perfection. The one that really threw me was when they cast Chris Evans as Captain America, and I was like, but he's the Human Torch. He's Johnny Storm. Like, I'm like, how is this guy going to be Captain America?
Because he plays the Human Torch, just that pretty boy, playboy sort of. It's a different playboy mentality than Tony Stark has. But it's it's still definitely that playboy. I can get all the girls. Kind of. He plays Johnny amazingly. Like, and you're like, yeah, it's like, how can this guy be Captain America?
Yep.
How?
And yet it works. I don't think there's been anything where I was like, oh, that like everything casting has, I like all of it. It's all good.
It's, I mean, and then you have the culmination, which is Endgame, and like, I'm not gonna lie, I think Endgame and Infinity Wars are kind of like the last two Harry Potter movies, where the first Harry Potter, like the first part of Deathly Hallows, is definitely the setup, and then the second half is the conclusion. And maybe not necessarily, I mean, they're still very good. They're good movies, but they're just good movies. But then when you link them together, they become this one amazing movie that is just wow.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, it's definitely where they aren't, you can't really have one without the other, obviously. But I love the tempo, the beats in each of the movies, where you're like, oh dang, like they lost hard. You're done.
Yeah. Well, and they have said that Infinity War is Thanos' movie.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely that like it's I liked how they were able to bring everybody back necessarily, but also not not everybody lives, not everybody survives.
Mm-hmm.
Um you know and Doctor Strange, he saw all these various conflicts and conclusions, and he only saw one where they won, and that was the one. I mean, it's bittersweet. It's that bittersweet victory that
Mm-hmm.
it's again kind of linking it back to Game of Thrones with Dany, and when she gets to King's Landing, it's that bittersweet victory.
Yeah.
Like you're rooting for him, but at the end there's just there's that very hint of sadness, and just sort of like, wow, not everybody made it out alive.
Now that we've got like the 22 movies
Mm-hmm.
done, and we've got a lot of new things coming up. I know that I mean, we're getting a Black Widow prequel movie. We're getting
Mm-hmm.
Guardians of the Galaxy 3. We're going to be getting like Black Panther 2, Doctor Strange 2,
Spider-Man: Far From Home.
Spider-Man Far From Home, which I think is like the last official like phase for or movie for this phase before everything wraps up and they start their new stuff. We're getting an Eternals movie, we're getting a Shang-Chi movie, we're getting Disney Plus with all of its TV miniseries stuff like WandaVision and Bucky and Falcon and a What If series. Where do you see the Marvel Cinematic Universe going from here? Like, what would you like to see?
I mean, I love the Infinity Gauntlet series. That's the thing, and they stuck the landing, Whereas Game of Thrones can be questionable whether or not they stuck the landing. I think definitively we can say, Endgame stuck the landing. Um and so I think it definitely, like you said, there's just so many new projects that are coming out with, like you said, WandaVision, and a whole bunch of like different standalone movies. I'm very excited about Black Widow getting her own movie, even if it is a prequel. I really kind of hope we figure out what happened in Budapest. I really want to know what happened in Budapest. But I think, at this point they're sort of, at a clean slate where they can start throwing those darts at the dartboard and see what sticks.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to sort of having that, fresh, clean slate. But then they also, like you said, have serials going forward. They have Spider-Man going forward. They have Guardians of the Galaxy, thankfully with James Gunn under the helm again. They have Black Panther 2. They have what was the Guardians of the Galaxy, Black Panther. I don't know if there's going to be another Thor. I kind of hope that Thor is in the next Guardians of the Galaxy. That would be kind of cool.
I do too.
What did they say? As Guardians of the Galaxy?
As Guardians of the Galaxy, which is actually a comic book.
Yeah, I know.
And it's been a comic book for like the past year or two.
I know. I really kind of hope that they go that route. Like, I think it'd be amazing to see Volume 3 be that. But then you have like all of, like you said, like everything with that their Disney Plus series, and everybody's speculating whether or not they took down like the Defenders off of Netflix, so then they could put it back up on the Disney Plus.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm kind of hoping they do, because I loved Daredevil. I loved Jessica Jones was my favorite.
Yep.
Luke Cage was really good. Iron Fist, I mean, I don't know. I think that one was definitely one of, like I said, they don't drop the ball very often, but when they do, it's noticeable. He was better in Defenders, I will say that. Like, they rounded him out better in Defenders. I haven't watched the Punisher series yet. I want to. It's on my but I loved the Punisher in Daredevil, the Daredevil series. So
Right.
yeah, I hope that they go back, that they took them off Netflix, that they canceled them to bring them back on Disney Plus, because I think that was, I really like those. I love all the little spin-offs that they do, like Agents of Shield with Phil Coulson. I love Phil Coulson just as a character in general. Like, oh my god, I love that a one-off character got so much love
Mm-hmm.
from the fandom that they were like, yeah, we're gonna bring him back. And not only are we gonna bring him back, but he's gonna get his own TV show. So
Yeah, it's definitely something where I think Disney Marvel has, like you said, they have that clean slate of, well, you throw darts at the dartboard, especially on two of the movies that they announced, where you're like, oh, like
yeah.
the Eternals and Shang-Chi are definitely choices where I'm looking at the roster of characters that they have, and they wouldn't be my first choice or my second choice or my third choice, but there's clearly a reason that they want those movies in place.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, it's kind of like, you have to also think about it. They did Ant-Man. So
yeah.
I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy, they did that too, and it I think it all comes down to, again, the way that they lean into that source material and make it work. Because
Mm-hmm.
like I said, I think the only point that I've ever been disappointed in a Marvel, I'm not going to say movie, because I'll say just the universe in general, again, is Iron Fist. I don't think, again, they fixed him a lot in Defenders, and I haven't seen the second season of Iron Fist, just because, like I said, I didn't really like I didn't
Right.
like the first one that much, but I liked him in Defenders. I liked him in that with when he teamed up with everybody, and I liked that block series as a whole. Jessica Jones was my favorite. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know anything about Jessica Jones going into Jessica Jones. Definitely was one of those, watched it first and then went and looked up and was like, oh, this is really cool. The only reason I originally watched it was because David Tennant was in it, and he's in Doctor Who, and I love Doctor Who. 10th Doctor is my doctor, so like it pulled me in, and he pulled me in, and I was like, oh, this is really good. Like, and it's kind of why I'm watching Good Omens too, which premieres today. Is David Tennant is in it. I've had Good Omens, for the book by Neil Gaiman, for like ages, never read it. Ended up reading it, or listening to it on an audiobook on the 19-hour car trip from Colorado back home to Michigan. And I was like, man, this is really good. Oh my God, I can't wait for the series. Again, it's one of those things where it's, a certain actor sort of like hooks you, and
Mm-hmm.
you get the bug, and it happens.
Exactly.
So,
well, we will see what happens with the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I think it's going to be fine. I think as long as they remember sort of what they've built and what they have, I think they'll be good.
Yeah, and it's also good that we're kind of getting a like breathing room, because after
Mhm.
Spider-Man comes out, there's not another movie until I think April or May of 2020. So we're getting a good break of no Marvel movies.
We're getting a detox.
Yeah, we're getting to reset ourselves and get ourselves ready for whatever's next.
I think we need it. I think I'm very excited about Spider-Man Far From Home, because I really want to see, like I feel like that's going to be like you said, it's the definitive endpoint of phase 3 or phase 4. Are we in phase 4 or phase 3?
I think we're in phase 4.
Okay. It's gonna, like you said, this is gonna be like the cap, and sort of we're gonna see how I'm really hoping that they're gonna touch on the post-snap world. Like,
Mhm.
I really hope that they I mean, it's going to be Spider-Man's story. We know that, and obviously him dealing with Tony, not having that mentor figure anymore in his life. And I'm excited to see that and how he's sort of going through that grieving process. But I also am excited to see like the post-snap world and how things have changed, how things maybe haven't changed. So I think like you said, that's sort of a good end point, is bringing it back into sort of, and Spider-Man's always been sort of this more intimate story, I think, more so than other superhero movies. You're not dealing with a god, you're not dealing with a philanthropist billionaire. You're dealing with a kid from Queens and his life. And, I mean, any kid at that age, I can't even imagine going through what he's been through at his age. God, I mean, so I love the intimacy of Spider-Man. So I think as long as they, acknowledge that, we've seen a little bit of him, in the trailers dealing with the loss of Iron Man and Tony in his life, which that first trailer broke me. I'm not gonna lie. I was crying. I was crying through the pain. It was bad. But I don't know, like, I just hope that we get to see the broader aspects, or even just hints of the broader aspects of what this post-snap world looks like. So I think you're right, though. I think it's going to be good. I think we're in a good place to throw darts at that dartboard.
Absolutely. Now, as I said at the beginning of the podcast, we found each other, or I came across you at some point on the Twitterverse, hanging out for tabletop gaming and Dungeons and Dragons. So I guess my first question is, what came first, Dungeons and Dragons or tabletop gaming?
Dungeons and Dragons came first.
How did you get into Dungeons and Dragons? Because everyone has an interesting story about their first foray into it.
Well, surprisingly, my first foray, again, I've talked a lot about random college things. I don't even know why. Like, there's been a thread. Like, Game of Thrones started in college. Marvel Cinematic Universe started in college. Technically, this started in college too, although I did not pursue it. There was a D&D club at my college that I went to, and I went to one meeting, and I just chickened out. I chickened out hard. Like, I went there, and I also remember having this memory, and I don't even know if it's right or if it was a dream. I think it's real, of when I was going even further back, a couple years, when I was a teenager, and I was taking guitar lessons. This is such a tangent, but I bear with me. I promise. I promise it's D&D related. I was taking guitar lessons, and I remember being waiting for my guitar lesson, and there was another kid who I went to high school with who was also waiting for his instructor. We had two different instructors, and he was sitting there, and he had a book, and he was, filling out stuff, and I was sort of watching him, I'm like, oh, what is that? And he's like, oh, this is Dungeons and Dragons. And I think this was around actually 2004 when 5e actually was released. So like, this is like right when 5e, I didn't know that then, I know that now. And he was sort of explaining to me what Dungeons and Dragons was, and I was half listening to him as, just sort of like, you're making polite conversation when otherwise there would just literally be like silence. And this was before the age of cell phones and, all that, internet access stuff. So we talked, again, I used talked liberally because I was half listening to him. I feel bad about that now. About Dungeons and Dragons, and he was showing me what the character sheet was, and it's a very vague memory. I just remember we talked about it for maybe 15 minutes before his instructor came, and then my instructor came, and we went and we did our lesson, and then like there was nothing ever spoken of that again. We went to the same school, but like I don't ever think I approached him ever again about Dungeons and Dragons. And then flash forward to college. Dungeons and Dragons again. There was a club at my at my college, and I went to a meeting, and I was like, "Oh, this is." I mean, like, I'm geeky, and I went, "This is too geeky for me," which I have said that on multiple occasions in my life, and then completely gotten into the thing that I have said was too geeky. Primary example being my husband, who I've been friends with since middle school. We have been best friends since middle school, and I remember being 16 and at my 16th birthday party, and people were pressuring me to go to prom, and I didn't want to go to prom, and I didn't have anybody to go with. I wasn't dating. It wasn't on my radar. I remember my mom going, "Well, what about that boy? He seems very nice." And I went, "Mom, he's too weird for me." Flash forward a decade more later, and I'm married to him and we have a kid. So, I mean, like I said, I have a habit of being like, "Oh, that's no bueno, that's not for me." And then I go, and then, years later, I'm doing the thing that I said was too geeky for me. And I think I've come to the realization as time has gone on and I have aged that there is nothing that is not too geeky for me. So those were my first 2 experiences, very, very, very briefly, experiences with Dungeons and Dragons. Flash forward again to 3 years ago, in my timeline, and we just recently moved to Georgia. My husband had gotten accepted to his military school, so we moved to Georgia so he could complete his military training. And my daughter was 3 months old, new mom, stay-at-home mom, and I, as all, you kind of go through that sort of. I didn't even realize at the time I had postpartum depression. It was definitely going through the motions, especially after we moved to Georgia, and I didn't really have a support structure. And, I'm flipping through YouTube, channel, looking for something to watch, and a show called Critical Role, is in my recommendeds, because you watched all this stuff, you might like this. So I was like, okay, why not? And what is it? Oh, Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, okay, So I watched it, and it was the first. And I love being a mom. I love being a stay-at-home mom. I love my daughter. But it was the first time since she had been born that I had there was a spark. Like, I didn't even realize that creative spark had gone out of me until that moment, until I sat down and I watched these crazy people, as they call themselves, nerdy-ass voice actors, sit down at a table and play Dungeons and Dragons, and I was hooked. Like, I binged. And I think by that time they had like 40 or so episodes, and each of those episodes is like
is like 4 hours
3
long.
to 4 hours long. So if you want to know, like, I binged hard, and I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. Like, this is so cool. I've never seen a show like this. I've never seen, I didn't realize this is what Dungeons and Dragons could be. Like, oh my god, like, what, and then of course, you have those flashback moments to when you are a kid and you're, like when I was younger, and like the D&D group that I didn't get into, or then the kid that I didn't talk to when I was a teen about Dungeons and Dragons. And you're like, oh man, I could have been into this. Why wasn't I into this? Like, but like it just sort of it ignited that spark of life that, again, I didn't even realize I had postpartum depression, but like after that I was like, whoa, I have been going through the motions, and I have been doing that hard. And so I really thank Dungeons and Dragons and Critical Role for kind of getting me out of that funk that I didn't even realize I was in that point. And, this was back in probably February of, let's see, my daughter's going to be, my daughter's going to be, well, no, actually, okay. Sorry, brain is working math. Let's see, it's 2019 now. My daughter's going to be 3, so she would have been, so this is back in 2015 when my daughter was 3 months old. We just moved to Georgia. So yeah, this was back in probably fall of 2015 that I started watching. And then by the spring of 2016, I was playing Dungeons and Dragons. And I was like, I need more. I want to play this. How do I play this? Ordered me a player's handbook, ordered, found an online, fillable character sheet, was like, oh my God, I want to play, I mean, it was like, I fell hard for Dungeons and Dragons. Like it was hard. And then by the winter of 2016, I started DMing for the first time. And yeah, so if you want to know my my foray, that is my foray. It was hard, it was fast, it was just whoa. I think whoa describes a lot of the things that I get into. I'm very passionate about, things, and when I like a thing, I like a thing. And sort of in the same sense that, Harry Potter saved my life when I was a kid. Dungeons and Dragons definitely, and by aspect, Critical Role definitely stopped me from going down probably a dark path that I didn't even realize I was kind of headed down. You don't know you have depression when you're in it, and I was away from family, and my husband was, busy with his stuff, so like I didn't have anybody around me who knew me well enough that could potentially catch it, I guess, catch that there was something wrong with me. And so, like I said, I think Critical Role, Dungeons and Dragons, for getting me out of that headspace, and giving me that spark back, really. So that's the long and the short of it. Maybe more the long of it, but yeah.
Okay. With Dungeons and Dragons comes the obvious question for me, at least.
Yeah.
Is there like a particular class or like character type that you gravitate towards?
My husband calls me the human jukebox because I can spontaneously break into song like during any part of my day. So I love bards. My favorite, I have a character that I made for a homebrew who is a Goliath bard, and I love her. She was one of the first characters that I ever made. I haven't played her in forever, but she was a lot of fun to play, mainly because you don't think of Goliaths as bards. And I liked playing something that was a little bit more quirky. But the other thing too is Grog from Critical Role was one of my favorite characters, and he's a Goliath. And Scanlan was a bard, a gnome bard. So I kind of combined the two. She's nothing like Scanlan or Grog, but she was fun to play. I liked her. So yeah.
Okay, awesome. And on top of D&D, you said that you have just started getting into other role-playing games.
Yeah, I mean, not as much as I want to, mainly because schedule and things have blown up in the best possible way, I guess. But then when things get momentum, other things have to be put aside for the time being. So I don't play as much as I want to play.
Right.
I don't DM anymore because I just don't have the time to prep. And I don't prep a lot, but I'm very much the type of DM that's like, if I can't give 100% to my players, then we're not going to play because they deserve me at my best. And if I'm not at my best, then, so there's been that as well. But yeah, I did get to play some Mask, which is I think, Powered by the Apocalypse engine game, and that was a lot of fun. It was, superheroes. My character, I had the Bull. I created a one from the Bull, which is kind of like a tank person, and her superhero name, again going from D&D, was the Silver Goliath, just because I really like Goliaths. They're one of my favorite races from D&D, so I kind of put a little D&D into my other games. But yeah, so
Okay. And not only do you're doing the gaming, but you're also on the Twitter community,
oh yeah.
being a huge part of that, and you also do stuff on a online store.
Yes, I have a D&D Etsy shop that does. I make dice bags, and currently working with Trevor Project with the Being Kind is a Free Action pins and stickers, which is done by the amazing. Started off by the amazing. I can't think. Her name's Paige, but she's a D&D and Paige on Twitter. She started the whole entire Being Kind movement, and I'm just so humbled that she let me be a part of it. And we have raised over, we've almost, actually right now, we've almost raised $2,000 for the Trevor Project, which is awesome.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah, like I said, it's so cool to be a part of that. Got another round of pins coming in. I actually have to go check my email today. And then we're going to do a Pride version of the pin for Pride Month. And then we just have the stickers as well. But I also do dice bags. I do D4 dice bags. They look like D4s. And then I do another type of dice bag, which is called the pea pod design. It kind of looks like a diamond. And I'm working with... actually, the person who I have to thank for this entire thing is Mark Schubert from Ice Cream Dice. And because he put out last fall, he put out a call for dice bag creators in the community, and I have been making dice bags for giveaway prizes for a part of a D&D community, that Discord community that I've been a part of, just as giveaway prizes. And people are like, oh, you should sell those. You have an Etsy shop. And I was like, no, I don't have time. I don't want to do that. Again, every single time that I have said no to something, it has literally come back in some way, shape, or form, and I end up doing it. It's the story of my life. But so I got he put a call out on Twitter, and I was like, okay, yeah, that'll be fun, like, okay, here's, and I didn't. Oh, I feel so bad saying this. I didn't have a lot of samples of bags because I just sent off a huge bulk of them for the next giveaway prize. And so the only one that I had on me was cat butt dice fabric, or cat butt fabric. And it is exactly what you would think. It is cat butts. So that was my submission to Mark. I was like, hey, I'm a dice bag creator. Here's my thing. Do you like it? It was the D4 dice bags, and it had the cat butt dice fabric. And you know what? He said yes, and that is how I got involved with his Kickstarter. I'm making the exclusive D4 dice bags for him, which there's over 400, and I have I'm about a little less than halfway done with those. So those get shipped off in August. So I still have time to make them. They're not too hard to make. So then that happened, and then I got traction in the community because of Mark and because of the work I was doing with him. People like, again, oh, where did we get the bags? I want to buy them. And I'm like, oh, don't have time, maybe. And then finally I was like, okay, fine. I guess I can set up an Etsy store. What am I going to call it? Well, I'm known as Dungeon Mom Designs. And then in April 1st, which is funny because that's April Fool's Day, I ended up launching my Etsy store, and then the whole being kind thing happened, and I got even more traction, and I'm like, oh boy, this is, like it's been a happy snowball. I don't know if I'm entirely control of, that said snowball. At sometimes I feel like I'm just sort of like rolling around in it and hoping that I don't hit a tree. But so that happened, and then somehow, I don't even know how, I have over I like I said, I don't know. I am just me. Like I don't know how any of this is happening. I'm humbled and grateful and thankful to the community that they have, openly embraced me and welcomed me and supported me, and I can't do anything that I would be doing without their help. So like the fact that like this is happening, and like I'm being given all of these amazing opportunities, and I just want to make sure that I'm giving back and using my voice, the very small corner of the community that I am a part of, that I'm being positive, that I'm giving back, that I'm able to lift other people up and, help promote and get their name out there as well, and just give back, because like I said, I've been given a lot in such a small period of time that it's frankly overwhelming sometimes, in the best way, but also in a scary way, because I'm just so afraid, of disappointing people and making a mistake, I guess. Fear of failure has always been one of my biggest fears, and it's been fun to, sort of start to overcome that fear and realize that, it's, I don't know, I'm rambling at this point. It's hard to describe. I just feel so humbled, really and truly humbled, by the trust that the community has placed in me, and just the opportunities, even being able to speak on your podcast is an opportunity that I would not have had, a year ago. So I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for every opportunity that I've been given, which, like I said, all stems from Mark and Ice Cream Dice, and the fact that he took a chance on me. And I've been able to, I guess, make the most of that, or the best of that, even though I really don't think I deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, it has been a pleasure having you on the podcast today.
It's been amazing talking with you. I will come on and talk about whatever you want to talk about again. You can have me on again, or or not. It's completely up to you.
Well, for those who have made it to the end, number one, thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you for listening to my rambling. Gosh, I apologize.
For those who have made it to the end here, where are some of the places that people can find you on the internet?
So my main place that I'm mostly active is Twitter. You can find me at FN Dungeon Mom, capital F, capital N Dungeon Mom, as well as my Etsy shop, which is Dungeon Mom Designs, and that's about it right now. I'm on several Discord servers as well, but I don't have a I don't have a Discord server of my own. Yeah, I'm around. I'm here. I'm here waving awkwardly, in the breeze. Kind of like one of those wacky inflatable tube men things that you see. I guess that'd be a apt description, maybe. I don't know.
Again, I want to thank you for coming on, and hopefully everything keeps trucking forward on everything.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be fun. I'm excited. I have a lot of fun projects coming up. Some of them that I can't talk about right now, but I have a lot of fun projects in the works, and I'm like I said, I'm riding this roller coaster, and I don't have an emergency brake. So we'll see how it goes.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/talesfromthefandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.